Welcome to the Natural Parents Podcast, where we will cover all things faith, health, family, and wealth through a biblical perspective of putting things in life that matter most back into order. We're reminded in Matthew 6:33, where Jesus said, "But seek first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you." Join us each week as we focus on what truly matters most in this life and passing those values on to the next generation. This is the Natural Parents Podcast with Ryan and Abbie Hewkin.
Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about core values for our family and what that dynamic looks like for us.
Yeah, we're going to invite you guys into actually developing your own core values for your family. It's been a practice that we embarked upon, I guess, a couple years ago now. It's actually what was rooted in the Natural Parents being a thing. It's where we started the idea of, I was like, wow, hey, we really like those core values. We could do something about that.
Yeah, we were doing vision casting for businesses and things, and we need to set a vision casting for our family. What are our core values? The same way you do in a business.
Absolutely.
Every business has core values, and identifying them for your family.
So yeah, if you guys don't know, our personal core values for the Hewkin family are faith, health, family, and wealth. We put them in that order with a lot of intentionality. I think when we first started, family and health were flipped.
Yeah, we couldn't.
Actually.
Yeah, we were having a hard time with that.
But we got to thinking about it, similar to what we've talked about in other podcasts, is like, man, if we're not taking care of ourselves, if this vessel is getting ran down, then I'm actually giving a lesser version to my family of what they deserve, right?
Yeah, and I think we may have talked about this as well, but when you're on an airplane, put your oxygen mask on before helping whoever you're with, whether that's a lap child or whatever that may be. So you can't help them if you don't help yourself first.
So the faith, health, family, and wealth values, the pillars we talk about within the Natural Parents, they're our own personal core values. So we're here to live this out, share it with you guys, and invite you into experiencing maybe certain core values that make more sense for your family. So I heard this recently the other day that if dads would look at their family units as teams, either like sports teams or corporate structure teams, things like that, the world would be so much of a better place. And so it was a really cool idea. Actually, it came from, John Pryor, who's a pastor, and he does this whole thing on family teams. It's a really cool thing, cool resource you guys should check out. But he was talking about this, that we go to work oftentimes and we think like, well, there's this corporate structure and this is how it is. And well, that's what I did today for my family as a father. Like I went to work and made a paycheck, and moms too. I'm not saying that's not capable. I'm just speaking from the dad's perspective. And it's like, that's it. Done. So came home, ready for dinner. Let's go to bed, and repeat tomorrow. And then I think we would play a much more active role, dads, if we started to look at our team as a unit like that, like a team. Family team. And so I took this a step further. I was like, okay, well then I guess that makes me the head coach. I was like, whoa, careful, ego. No, it's not.
Backseat.
Yeah. God is the head coach, right? And so we have to, as co-coaches, start looking at our family in this sense that we've got to spend time carefully and prayerfully considering what God has intended for our life.
Yeah.
I believe that the family unit is the best representation, or has the possibility of being the best representation of God in this earth, right? We live in Satan's realm, but those of us who find a spouse, have children, raise them in a God-fearing way, like we have an opportunity to reach into the darkness of this world and shine a light, unlike anything else. And so with this concept, this is one small thing, developing core values for your family, that I think all of you out there that are listening that want more for your family is a foundation, like integral part of starting that fight, so to speak. And so, so we look at this like this, that God's the head coach. So I want to spend time with God. I got to, by myself, we've got to spend time by ourselves, but then also together, to come together as a family and look at this. But then we should prayerfully and carefully consider, what are our core values? So you guys, I invite you to do that. Spend time self-reflecting and prayer, and then come together, maybe as a spousal team, and see, what'd you come up with?
Yeah.
Were these the same four? I don't think we had the same four when
I don't think we did, but then I think that a lot of it we found really did go under other ones because they can be more broader terms.
Yeah.
And so like I know like integrity and things like that came up and we talked about, but really integrity can fall under faith. You know what I mean? And so if you're living by that, then a lot of them can fall into place under that. So it's okay to be broad. I'm a very specific in making sure that somebody understands what I mean. And so when we talked about that, just how they fall under.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times that's like, we've done this corporately, like I said, in our company structure too, of like developing core values. It's like, well, we've got this list of 35 things that are important to us, respect, honesty, trustworthiness,
I picture
untimely.
All, like, schools, like all the flags you see down the hall.
Yeah.
Like respect, responsibility,
integrity. Yeah, there's so many of those. But then, okay, so coming together, we did that. We separate, come together. What's your list? What's my list? Okay, how can we simplify this? Condense this down into a short, concise list. There's a great book out there. If you run your own business or you're in a high kind of position in a particular business or something like that, it's called Traction. There's an awesome core values practice out of the book Traction that's all built around building your company. If we do it for a company, why wouldn't we do it for a family? Around your core values, hiring, firing, doing all these different things based on certain core values and people's ability to adhere to those core values. So, looking at that, and then once we've come together on those, so mom and dad, once you guys have come together on developing what you think your core values are, involve the kids. And honestly, our kids, they're probably too young to say, hey, this is what our core values are, right? But how do we live it out, right? What do we do as Hewkins? How do we structure our lives around our core values? If faith is truly our first thing, our kids aren't playing weekend sports right now. But if faith is our first core value in that order, how often can we authentically say, I'm going to let a sports game come in front of our family going to church?
Right.
Doing things like that.
Right.
Carving out a formalized of some sort Sabbath throughout the week to say, hey, we're going to rest. We're going to put our focus on God because that's first in our life. So how do we live that out, right?
Sure.
So don't just willy-nilly say, I like trustworthiness as my favorite core value. It's like, well, are you a super trustworthy person? Because we got to live that stuff out, right? And
it's okay not to decide them all in one day. One thing about us is there's a whiteboard within reach at all times because Ryan is the
or an iPad.
Whiteboards. Yeah.
Just
a
mobile whiteboard.
Mobile whiteboard. And so you can just sit and think about them and write them and branch ideas off of them or different things like that too. It doesn't have to be a one sitting, this is it, written in stone type thing.
Absolutely. Abbie's all about permission.
Permission. I don't give myself any permission.
Yeah.
at all.
But guys, again, we come back to this all the time. We don't have all of this figured out. We're just sharing with you some things that we do that we like, the way they work in our lives, and have come to help us focus on the things that truly matter
from
most
a lot of different influence points too.
Yeah, absolutely. Think of us as a funnel network of all this stuff that's out there, and we're just trying to bring you a concise version of it. And so developing core values, I think you guys will do a great job of doing so. We say that we stand for a world where the family unit is held as the sacred image bearer of God, empowering others to fight against the darkness that's in this world. Yeah. If you guys as a family unit, as natural parents yourselves that are listening to this podcast, if you start to look at your family units this way, oh man, I just get excited about what's accomplishable in this world. Like I kind of get excited about like fighting back against darkness in that sense, not naively. Like I know there's a lot of dark powers and evil stuff and I'm not inviting a fight in, but there's tons of scripture that supports this idea that the family unit is God's weapon in this world to be able to advance his kingdom. It's not a defense unit. Like, gird up your loins, let's roll. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so I invite you guys into that fight with us and let us know what you come up with for your core values. Let us know what questions you have, what ways that you've found maybe to be super effective in developing your own core values for your family.
What do you think the best way to teach your kids gratitude and generosity is?
Is yelling at them an option?
Yes.
Obviously not that. Anything in life is obviously better learned by example.
Modeled, yeah.
I heard this recently, and regards to manhood, is that so many people, so many young men, manhood is caught, not taught. So they just pick up who is in their life in a position, whether it be their father or a father figure, an adult male in their life. They see and then model that behavior. So they just catch it, because we men are not leading by example and teaching our next generation how to be men. And so gratefulness is probably the greatest tool that any one person could have to change their whole life.
Yeah. I really do agree. I think that when you shift like to gratitude, even if you're like upset about something and you just turn your focus to gratitude, and like my number is always 3. Like whenever we sit down at the table, or if our kids are having like a hard day, or that's mine, or they're going back and forth with their siblings or something, and I just ask them like, what are 3 things that you're grateful for? And I don't allow easy answers. Like not my mom, dad, my family. Like nope, doesn't count.
Mom, dad, brother.
Yeah, doesn't count. Um, and just really when you focus on that, I think that it changes your heart and your energy towards anything throughout the day. And I think that generosity is the same way. I think that that's shown. I think that kids learn best by example. You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
do as I, do as I say, not as I do. Like that's always something you have to say, because kids just want to do what you do.
yeah, right. And they also just want to know why.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I got to do this? Why do that? But I think teaching the why of gratefulness,
Yeah.
is so crucial, because it is actually neurologically impossible to be in a state of anxiety and gratitude at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Our brains have this deep-seated limbic system, they call it, and in the amygdala of our brain is where we hold our subconscious fears and concerns and anxieties and all these types of things. But to cognitively use your higher centers of your brain, you to do gratitude, you can't be in both at the same time.
Makes
So
sense.
you will resort to your fears, your anxieties, your concerns. But if you actually can learn to be grateful in a moment of seemingly chaos or concern or, again, fear, if you can learn to do that and then teach that and impart that onto your children, holy smokes, like, it can be so powerful. And I love seeing kids and people in general like overcome fears,
Yeah.
overcome what their neurology is geared towards fearing, right, or geared towards going wrong. And I think if we start from a place of gratitude, you can do so much with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so teaching our kids super simple ways that we do it is, like you said, give me 3 things, or start your day.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, first thing in the morning, you could have a gratitude practice. You could have ways of saying, let's just take a moment and thank God for what He's given us today.
Yeah.
Breath in our lungs, right? Like, anything we can
Right.
be grateful for.
Do you think that there's like a fine line between showing your kids to be generous and encouraging them to be too generous? Like, is there a boundary there for them to be like, no, 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 like this is mine, or this is important, versus like give it all away?
I do think there is. I'm not sure I have the answer for it. What I think of is, to your point, setting a boundary. I think there's a fine line between pleasing everyone
Mm-hmm.
and being generous.
Yeah.
Being, even Scripture says it's more blessed to give than to receive, right? And so there's easy ways. I'm not going to say they're easy. There are simple ways that oftentimes, because of our society, are actually quite difficult to instill a giving attitude as opposed to a receiving attitude.
Yeah.
We live in a world societally where, again, everything we do is, I need more of that. I want what they have,
Mm-hmm.
right? All these things. And I think that really permeates our mind, because it's our human nature is to look over and actually see lack.
Yeah.
Even in the Garden of Eden, God said, take anything you want, whatever you have, first. And then He said, just don't eat from that tree. And all Adam and Eve could do was, here, I need that tree.
Mm-hmm.
It's just rooted in our nature. And I think that's really, really difficult. But if we can start to identify that as a problem, first and foremost, as parents to our kids, secondly, practice it ourselves, model it for them to learn from, and then teach them to do it differently, because their nature is going to be, I mean, I joke all the time, I was like, these little sinners, these little black-hearted, because I know I am one too, but it's just amazing. I mean, you get a hold of, like, tell a toddler no.
Right.
No one teaches them to throw a tantrum.
Right.
They just know, I don't get what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a hard lesson to learn. But I will tell you, parents, it is your job, your responsibility, and your obligation to teach them that they don't always get what they want.
Right.
Because
and you're doing them a favor to not always give them what they want.
Yeah. Scripture again, Jesus says, you as earthly parents, like, if your child asks for a stick, would you give them a snake? Like, no. Like, there's this idea that we can give our kids good gifts, but sometimes they're asking for things that would be bad for them.
Yeah.
Like 12 cookies in one setting, not good for them.
Yeah.
Eating the dinner that you prepared for them that's nutritious and quality and stuff, like, very good for them.
Right.
That's our option here tonight, right? Thank you, Mom, for making me a meal.
Mm-hmm.
I won't hear anything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and just setting a standard and a boundary and saying, like, we're not going to cross this line. You don't have to please everyone. You even say, okay, we're on the dinner thing. You're like, you don't have to like everything I make. I get that. There's going to be things you don't like, but, like, what if you made me a picture and I said, I don't like it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that would be hurtful, right? And so, yeah, it's just teaching our kids in these ways to just live it out.
Yeah, I feel like just controlling, I guess, their desires as well. Like, not being selfish, but not putting yourself always last, or not respecting your wants and wishes. Like, I think that there's that fine line there. Like, I just think of, their toys in their room, and when they want people to play with them or not play with them, and different things like that. Like, just to be generous, but to respect them themselves as well, and not get used to always just it does, as long as everybody else is happy, like I do. There's just that fine line, and I think it's definitely a challenging one to navigate, and just having that conversation with them of, not to let themselves get walked on,
Right.
but also nothing you have is really yours, and so sharing it and giving it. And I think your mom, funny enough, I always think of her when I think of this stuff. I don't know if we were dating or when it was, but there's this story, and I know I have it mixed up because I don't know why she'd be through the drive-thru. I don't know if she went into the bank and the lady, like the teller, loved her shoes.
Sure.
And then your mom has done this probably a million times now. And so your mom, I think, gets in her car and goes to the bank drive-thru and gives the shoes to the window.
Yeah.
And your mom has gone home barefoot, without jackets, without like anything that you can think of, because if somebody compliments it, she's like, please take it. Here you go.
Right.
And I always think of her whenever I think of that.
Yeah. And it's, again, probably a fine line. And the perception there is nothing I have is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need this thing to be happy. But I will say that does not come naturally.
Right.
Our children are not just, I mean, to an extent. I think our girls have always been pretty good sharers because there's always been two. They've never not had a sibling. And so there's a dynamic there that has to be navigated. But I do think the better we practice it, the better we live it out and showcase to them nothing we have is actually ours, and everything that is good in our life is a gift from God.
Mm-hmm.
That starts to put you in this natural state of gratitude.
Yeah.
Like, I just think it's not all sunshine, unicorns, and rainbows. However, if you are in a season right now, God needs you there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just look to it and say, God, thank you for this opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
I joked with you last night about posting a picture of our son and say I prayed for patience and he gave me this because that boy is wild, right?
Yeah.
And he tests my patience every single day. And people joke about that. Oh, be careful. Don't pray for patience. God will give you opportunities to be patient. All these things. Like, yeah, he certainly will, because he's a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows if he sees a flaw in your flesh, that he will say, hey, let me help you out. Let me give you opportunities to practice this out.
Right.
Whether it be finances, whether it be health, whether it be fitness, whatever the situation is, wherever you're at in your life, you're there because God needs you there.
Right.
So you might as well say, thank you, Dad.
Yeah.
For the opportunity to improve my finances, improve my health, improve my life, improve my relationship, whatever it is.
Right. And just knowing that it is all possible and there is always good that comes out of it. I think that's a common thing that we don't have to get into today. But like, well, show me the good in this and show me the good in that. And I think that there really is. And if you just understand that you're not made to understand everything, but if you can just focus on what you are grateful for and the good things in life and the blessings that are there that you're just not recognizing. And so I think that would be just something good. Like this week, if everybody just sat down at the dinner table together or breakfast table, whatever meal that you're always at together, and just went around the table and it's like 3 things that you're grateful for that aren't just the easy ones, that aren't just the obvious ones, like
No repeats.
food, water, sunshine, like those are good ones, but like
Sure.
even more specific, like, oh, this gentleman held the door for me whenever I walked into the supermarket, or this lady said that, whatever it may be. But
Well, yeah.
not skimping out, like actually forcing yourself to think about it.
Give a real answer.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I love it. I love just even once a day, if you did that, or once this week, just make that your challenge, makes that your goal, is to sit with your family and ask them. Sometimes we start with, hey, what was good about today? What was the best part of your day? Okay, well, if that was the best part of your day, let's thank God for it, right? Let's be grateful. Aren't you so grateful that you had the opportunity to play outside all day, go down and do this or that or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Had a sports game, got a hit today. Like, thank you, God, for giving me the ability to see that ball and hit that ball. Like, everything in life we could be grateful for.
Mhm.
And the more we practice it, truly, I think the more joy, peace, and happiness you'll have in life.
Yeah. We'd love to hear from you on what focusing on gratitude for you and your family has done and the changes that you've noticed. Let us know.
If you are joining us for the first time since the expo, we are so glad that you are here. It was an amazing weekend. We got so much amazing feedback. Some were asking us to do it twice a year. Some were asking when the next one was. It was just all around amazing. Now, if you were there and you missed a speaker that you wanted to hear, or you just want to hear the replay, just go down in our description and you can click the link for our Off of Social Media community group where the replays will be.
I've been holding to a lifeline, waiting on the right time.
Welcome back, guys. We're excited to share with you another podcast episode today where we're going to talk about harmonizing your life, especially around homeschool.
Yeah, so like harmony versus balance, a lot of times they go hand in hand. And for the longest time, I was like, no, it has to balance. Like everything has to balance. But really, it's just when things work in harmony.
Yeah, we hear that a lot of times from parents, but just busy people in general. Is like, oh, I need a work-life balance, right? Work is a part of life, for sure. We're all about putting the things that matter most in life back into proper order. But I think the word balance, if we're really going to break it down, leads to this idea of taking from one and giving to another. I remember learning about scales and weight in school.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really cool. Like, take this like big thing that wasn't very heavy and set it on the scale, and then take this one little bitty thing and it was really heavy, and you could still make those scales balance out. But if you were putting beads or something on the scale, you had to take some from this side and put it onto that side until you got the weight relatively even. And so the word balance quite literally means to take from one and give to another. In financials, in the finance world, they talk about this idea of a zero-sum game, meaning that wealth, there is no manufacturing or creation of more money. Sadly, like the stock market is kind of set up this way. Like if you go, even like the cryptocurrencies and things like that were set up this way, where it's like, if this thing's doing really well, if one person's doing really well, that means unfortunately that somebody else is kind of losing money. And so there's no great wealth creation, but there's just a transfer of it and a balancing of it. And I don't like that way of thinking. And actually, it's not just that I don't like it, I don't think it's truly how life is. I think it's more about harmony and bringing harmony to it. And those sound like they're just words. It's just like semantics. But if we really break it down, I think it means something, especially to parents.
Yeah, and one time I heard a saying, I'm going to choose different examples than what the book gave, keep this PG, but it's like okay, I'm eating healthy, but then that means that my workouts have to suffer. Like, if just because one thing's doing really well doesn't mean that the other things have to suffer. Like, you can have it all. You can have everything be working for you and well all at the same time. So I think it's easy to think, oh, well, this is going really well. So what's about to, break on the back end?
Yeah. And sometimes people will say, well, that's just fairy tale land and optimistic thinking and things like that. But maybe so. I just happen to believe that you can live whatever life you want to live within, obviously, legal ramifications, etc.
You can have morals.
Right. You have to have morals, have to abide by the law, different things of that nature. I'm just saying, like, okay, for example, today is our son's, ideally, if the weather holds up, is our son's first t-ball game. It starts at 5:30. Typically on Thursdays I work until 6. Not today. Am I taking away from my off? No, I'm just maneuvering and creating
Because
an
tomorrow,
opportunity. Tomorrow I'll work until 6. I normally work till 5. But I'm going to make it work to where I get the best of both worlds. I get to serve people in my profession, and then I get to go and make sure that I'm at my son's first t-ball game. We can create and have whatever life that we want, whether you're an entrepreneur or you work a 9 to 5 or for someone else. Like, you can set boundaries in your life. You can create the lifestyle that you want to create and do it however you want to do it. People will respect you for that.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a big thing when it comes to homeschool. People put themselves in a box, and I totally get that, because that's like my nature. That's where I go. Like, everything has to fit in a box and everything has its time and its place. And you can't, heaven forbid, you move something around and be flexible. And honestly, you're the one my mom would say, you ruined me.
I'm so goosey-goosey.
Yeah, you're just like, whatever. But that's where it comes to homeschool, because some people are like, well, I want to homeschool, but I work. And they think that's just it. Well, that's it. My kid has to just go to public school. But if it's truly a desire of yours, there are things that you can do to work around it. Like, you can work remote. You can ask, if you're in a physical location, you can ask your boss if there's remote positions available, or if you can do a couple days remote and maybe they stay with their grandparent on the days that you go in, or whatever that may look like. And you may be thinking, okay, but I'm still working remote. How am I supposed to homeschool my kid? Well, yes, but homeschooling your kid does not take very long. And a lot of times people think public school is the only option that they have, because they don't know what to do with their child during the day when they're working. And so remote work can help that. But then in the evenings or before you work, whatever your schedule may look like, you can schedule that time. It takes at most a couple hours to do, and you can split it up morning and evening.
For sure. And again, coming back to the idea, like, okay, there's a lot of families out there that are just like, man, I don't know that I want to send my kiddo to public or private school for that matter. I really would love to homeschool them, but, and there's always that but that feels about a balancing of life. And so I think when parents oftentimes are looking at that, we're too linear, or we're too inside the box thinking that we need both of our incomes. Well, possibly. You might need two incomes. Finances are a piece of life for sure, and we need to be able to make money to provide for our families and set up for a future and put dinner on the table and all these different things. That's a reality of life. I'm not ignorant of that when we're talking about this. However, what is it in life that we could actually go without to make sacrifices to put this at the forefront of our children's needs? So many people, whether it's what children are receiving as education formally, that the government has established as these parameters of hierarchy that we need to actually develop into our children at certain ages, whether it's that they don't want them to learn, or they don't want them to pick up on some of the other habits from some of the other kids that maybe don't have those morals and standards and
their home life
structure and that home life that they're bringing to school. And I joke about, that kind of getting on to the other kids and they're bringing that home. And so there's a whole dynamic there that gets brought up. And if that's truly something we want to navigate around, it might look like we've got to make some sacrifices whenever it comes to the finances aspect of going to a single income.
Yeah, may look like debt pay down first,
For sure.
let's finish out this school year in public school, let's pay down debt, maybe then you can work on one income. I think oftentimes people maybe feel like they should homeschool, and so like, oh, but I can't, because I have a job and I have to have that income and things, and if that's the case, and if homeschool truly isn't a desire of your heart, that's all right.
For sure.
Like, if that is just what you want your kid to be involved in, every parent has that right, and it's not wrong. Like, you can have whatever you think is appropriate for you and your family, but there are options. Like, even you could do a buddy system, with some co-op friends that you meet, because there's plenty of ways, contrary to popular belief, that
But they're
homeschool
going to be
kids,
socially awkward.
I know, homeschool kids can socialize.
Yeah.
And truly very, very well with adults. We have a lot of homeschool friends, and their kids are the best.
Seriously
They're,
well-rounded.
yeah, so well-rounded, talented, smart, can communicate with adults like so well. And so there's the buddy system. You can, like, if I had to work, in the office or whatever that may be, and I can't maybe care for my kids while they're out of school, right? Because that also serves as the babysitter. I would call Danielle and be like, hey, can we swap off here and
Sure.
be able to do that? So there's definitely ways to get creative with being able to, even if in this season it feels like it is out of reach.
Yeah. And again, going back to, because I think it's a big root, there's two main objections that I think come to the forefront when we talk to people or people talk to us about asking about homeschooling their kids. And one is the time money construct of things. And so getting outside of the box of thinking that it's got to be even a 9-to-5 remote position.
Right.
It's like, this is 2024. There are tons of moral ways to make money online that you can actually do, whether it's 5 a.m. while the kids are still sleeping, or 9 p.m. after they go to bed, or 10 p.m. sometimes. Our kids are
still
resistant to bed
Yeah.
still. So there's a lot of different things. I mean, it's actually amazing. The one that I cannot even believe, I'm going to say this on the podcast right now, but there is actually a way for you to get paid for your poop.
What?
Did you know this? Yeah, there's a website where this is a major thing. Sorry, side note, of actually health care, where we're trying to help people. Some of the healthiest people in the world have these really healthy guts.
Research?
Yeah. And so
Oh.
they're actually, this is crazy. They're transplanting other people's fecal matter into really, really sick people. And the really, really sick people, autoimmune disease, cancer, just major degenerative sicknesses, they're healing because they get their microbiome figured out. And so that's a whole nother podcast topic for another day, is how important the microbiome is for you and your family's health. But it's crazy. Like, you can get paid for that, like $500 per sample that you send.
You'd be regular.
lab,
You could be a
right?
millionaire.
I know it's a very, very niche, very specific amount of matter that they're looking for and all these types of things. So that might be hard. But I'm just telling you, you cannot sit here and tell me that there's not a way for you to make money online, upholding your ethics, your morals, your values, and not get paid to do
Sell
that,
your poop.
if homeschooling is that important to you. And so the other thing that you touched on is the social aspect of things, like
Yeah.
how kiddos, I tell you, the most well-rounded, I mean, like, if you are thinking about homeschooling and your family is telling you that this objection is present, and like, oh, you don't want your kids to be like those socially awkward homeschool kids, give me one time in reality of life, after we turn 18 years old and go graduate into the workplace, give me one time where we only work with, converse with, get along with people of our exact same age for the rest of life.
Right.
I mean, you're going to have a manager that's older and or younger than you in the workplace. You're going to have different demographics, different cultures, different lifestyles. And the more well-rounded we get that, I think you get that in homeschool more than you get anywhere else.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes the young kids, especially in co-ops, are engaging and playing with and learning with older kids and vice versa. And it's just that, I think, actually gives forth the most well-rounded future for our children. If we look at how the current American education system was set up, the founder of it, it was right around, I think 1830 was the timeline of this, as he started to formalize it and say, hey, children need some sort of structure and free opportunity to learn. And I think the roots of that were pure. But then the Rockefeller family got a hold of it, and they said, hey, we could actually set up a system where we could train a workforce to be employed by us. And so we need them to learn and do certain things in a certain way, and only that way, do what they're told, listen to authority, not question it, all this kind of stuff. And they started to set up the American education system. They got their fingers in on it. And it looks totally different than what I think it was originally intended to be. Was this pure, like, let's teach children, let's educate people. I want to say it's Winston Churchill, but I don't actually think it is. It's somebody else has this quote that the problem with the current education system is not that we're not educated enough. It's that we're only educated to the point that we no longer ask questions about our education. And I think so much of not homeschooling is set up that way. And so, again, the point of this conversation is for those of you out there that are maybe thinking, is homeschooling really a viable option for us? I'm here to tell you it is. It's figure outable. I just happen to believe that anything in life that can be thought can be created, can be, like, for lack of a better term, manifested into reality. If we can think it, nothing that exists in life wasn't first a thought before we ever had it. And so if just that homeschooling is a desire, you're pure in that. That's an okay desire to have, and it is obtainable. We're just here to deepen that conversation around it for you, and hopefully encourage you to pursue it.
Yeah, and kind of like you said, of just like how kids are, they can be very well rounded. Like if a kid is with its mom or dad or caregiver or whoever that may be, and like they're just able to walk through life with you, and they can take care of, like, if you have a homestead or you have animals, like they learn about animals' needs and where their food comes from and how to plant a garden, and maybe finances, like thinking through different scenarios of finances. Besides for counting money, I don't know that I ever had that education. I mean, I know that we took a personal finance class in high school, but other than that, just when they're able to walk through life with you. But also, I think that it's a common thing for moms and parents to act like their children are a burden. And so if you're that kind of person, then this would never work, because your children are going to be with you a lot. But it's such a blessing. You know how much life that you get back whenever you are able to spend that time with your kids and intentionally raise them to have the values and the morals and the just the education and experiences that you want for your child.
Well, and I hear it all the time, especially from moms, because they seem to be the primary educator in the homeschool environment, is, I don't know if I'm qualified to educate my child. And that breaks my heart, because I'm here to tell you that that is a product of the system that wants you to think that way. They want to create in you your child do what they're told, 9-to-5 system kind of employee, for lack of a better term. But there's no one on this planet that's more qualified to educate your child than you.
One time I was talking to this mom who seemingly had it all together. She had a lot of kids. She had homeschooled for a really long time. And in my eyes, did everything right. And it was something that, when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, well, how could I ever be that? And I said, I'm like, how do you know how do you know everything to educate your kids? And she said, you don't. You stay one step ahead. And that has like stuck with me. That was over 6 years ago when the girls were itty bitty. We were in Atlanta for a conference, and I just was asking her about that. And that was always so inspirational to me, because you're right. It's not like you have to have all of the education that you've ever learned in your life right up here, the front, tip of your tongue, to come out and educate your kids. There's also such good curriculums to choose from. And there's conferences and events and things that you can actually go and hold and study and look at the curriculum. But you also, if it doesn't work for you, it may work for your friend and their kids, but if it doesn't work for you, there's a million more to choose from. You can do ones that are like Christian companies, like The Good and the Beautiful is the one that we do with the kids right now. Great curriculum, incorporates Jesus, has great morals that teaches your kids, things like that. But also just giving ourselves permission to not only be the source of education that our kids are getting. And so yesterday, we were actually in the garden, the kids and I was trying to take out what I was hopeful was flowers. My dad told me that they're just weeds that will flower eventually, but they're just weeds. So I was trying to get some of those out, and I was looking, and I noticed that there was foam, looked like soap almost, on one of the leaves. And I was like, ew, gross. I wonder if it's from a snake. Is there a snake in here? I don't know if they foam or anything, but I don't like snakes, and I didn't like the foam, so maybe they went together. And those are just thoughts I was having to myself. And then Avery comes up to me and she goes, Mom, see this foam here? And I'm like, yeah, please don't ask me what it is because I don't know, And she's like, do you know what that's from? I do, I'll tell you. And I was like, okay, please do tell me, like thinking she was just going to make something up. And she goes, I learned on PBS Kids that something that is similar to a caterpillar, it wasn't exactly a caterpillar, will put this foam out their butt and put it on the leaf and it makes their home and it protects them. I'm like, what? And I look it up.
Yeah.
Sure thing. She's telling the truth. And I'm like, where did you learn that? And she's like, PBS Kids. Eleanor wonders why. And so, again, you just don't have to be the one that is only educating your kids. When you have screen time and TV time, it can be things that are educational and fill their brain with good knowledge and not just the mindless TV of like girlfriends and boyfriends that are in like junior high. And I don't know why I call it junior high. I always call it middle school, but I feel like the show's called junior high. And so it's just not good. It's not adding anything to their life and to their knowledge.
Sure. And we all have those moments, and screen time's a whole discussion for a whole nother day, which I want to get into, but I think you nailed it. It's like, let's make purpose out of this screen time, if you will. Like, okay, again, I've got to get something done real quick. Hey kids, let's watch an episode of, what an awesome title to a show, Eleanor Wonders Why. It's like, let's ask questions, let's figure things out. And they get to learn in that. And now we've got productive time whenever you were able to probably get some work done in that moment or do something, as we have a lot going on with living in the camper and building a house and doing all these different things. It's like you're able to make the most of that. It's not that is their formal education. It's just like, let's make most of the time that we have. And so, yeah, I think that's really good. And giving just parents, if you guys are seriously curious about it, just permission that you are able to go and seek these answers. The curriculum conversation can be overwhelming, but just know wherever you start, it's probably not where you're going to end up, but just getting started is the most important thing. And we support you in that.
Yeah, and so if you're looking on like pulling your kids out of public school, starting the homeschool, in the show notes there's going to be a website that you can go and you can click on your state and it will give you the homeschool laws. So just a good resource for you if you're starting that journey and don't know where to start. I'm excited to talk about raising kingdom entrepreneurs and just cultivating our kids to really think about how to create and steward and find a need and fill that need.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
That makes me think of something about my heart in this inside our house is to teach our children the idea that they're paid on the value they bring.
Yeah.
Not just for the time that they're committing to the workplace, right? And so, again, people have heard me talk about this guy before, but his name is Jim Rohn. Like, I don't care if you even don't want to be an entrepreneur, you don't want to pursue anything in business, anything like that. If you would just listen to his YouTubes, like, he's all about personal development because, yes, he teaches people that have jobs in business and sales or own their own business or different things like that. But he's oftentimes just talking about his whole idea is that anything in life gets better if you just focus on you, if you just make yourself a little bit better. And so his idea here is like, he's talking in the 70s, 80s, and 90s or when his audios are from, but he's talking, in this one, he's like, so you get paid $4 an hour. He's like, is it possible that you could create and make yourself more valuable, like twice as valuable? Could you get paid $8 an hour in that concept, right? And he's like, the answer is yes, like unequivocally, it's yes. We just got to work on you to create that. And so like we've started trying to figure this out. It's like, how do we set up our household, chores or things that the kiddos are wanting to do in a way that they're not just starting to program their mind towards like, well, I gave this much time, so I earned this much dollars. But it's like, hey, no, I provided this level of value and that was worth this much time or this much money to someone. Because again, for me, the idea is really rooted in the great equalizer in all things is time. We all only have 24 hours in a day, right? How are some people able to accomplish and achieve so much in it, right? And I'm not just talking about monetary value. I'm talking about the heartfelt and the mission mind of so many entrepreneurial ventures. What need is there in the marketplace? What need is there in God's kingdom that our children may have come into this world purely with the purpose of pursuing that thing or solving that problem.
Yeah, and kind of going back to talking about, being paid for time or doing something, the value, we have talked about that we don't pay our kids for the common things, like you make your bed, you clean your room, you feed the animals, you do all of these things without being paid, because some things you just have to do,
Sure.
and nobody is going to pay you for doing those types of things.
Sure.
So, when it comes to that, and I think that relates a lot to entrepreneurship.
Sure.
They're still providing value by making their bed and cleaning their room and taking care of the animals, but not everything is going to be rewarded right then.
Sure.
Their payment may come when we are able to eat as a family the animals that we, have raised and have worked hard for. And the same goes for entrepreneurship. Just because you're providing value doesn't mean that will be rewarded immediately.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, sometimes it's delayed. Sometimes you have to stay the course. Sometimes you have to put in a lot of value and time and effort on the front end. And so I think that also instills in them a little bit more of delayed gratification and work and grit and all of the things that it takes, because entrepreneur is not for the faint-hearted. It's hard work mentally, if not just as much as all of the other.
Well, and again, say maybe you don't think you yourself as a parent or your children are super focused in that area, or maybe that's not a strength that you see God's given them or anything like that. There's this other concept I love that's called an intrapreneur. Like, okay, well, what if they could align themselves in such a way? What if they worked on themselves in such a way to become the kind of a person that a place that's in alignment with a mission that they have, that they could come on board there and provide a ton of value, right? And be paid well for it, right? And be making a difference because they're in this piece of that puzzle. But I think that even comes down to like just the mindset around work.
Yeah.
Like I feel like a lot of today's generation, if you talk to like our grandparents and, even parents' generation, there's like, oh, today's generation, which I think, well, yes, but I also think every generation past complains about the generation that they raised, mind you. Yeah. Right. So it's like,
they don't ever self-check.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's a concept that, you'll hear them say, well, they just don't know how to work or this, that, the other thing. And it's like, okay, possibly. And again, a lot of conversation to be had there, but what if we all just aligned our hearts with a mission, whatever it is? Like, if you don't like the job that you're currently in, you could change it, right? Like you could come in alignment with a different one that's more on mission, more, I don't mean to be sunshine, unicorns, and rainbows about this type of stuff, but I just think that you can create that life that you long for. You just have to kind of take that mindset towards it. And so again, maybe the entrepreneurial word is averse to people because they're like, hey, I don't want to do that. Okay, well, hear me out. You can still work, self-develop, become that entrepreneur. You can create and cultivate that value set mindset in our children, right, as they're growing up, with a mindset towards like, hey, God made work, so it can't be that bad. This pastor, Joby Martin, I love to listen to. He says 3 things. God set it up the world for men. He's usually talking to men when he talks about this, but he gave man a will to obey, a work to enjoy, and a woman to love. And like, if we have those things, let's go. You've got it all, right? And so I think sometimes our mindset towards our work becomes very negative in nature, and then we might be modeling that for our children. Yeah. And so then they're like, okay, well, I'll give my 8 hours a day or my 40 hours a week in exchange for this amount of money. And I just, my hope and my desire with, we say faith, health, family, and then wealth, that wealth pillar is rooted in that. Let's create something inside your family, or maybe for your children. Like, maybe your purpose, mom or dad, is to do the hard thing to set up the next step for your children to be able to actually pursue that entrepreneurial passion that they have, that God's laid on their heart. How do we continue to cultivate that within them?
Right. And I think that even just at a young age, letting your kids create and dream up this new business, right? I'm trying to remember what our kids had created signs for. I think they wanted to sell their stuff, and they went and they got a stack of printer paper, all of their markers, and they were doing rainbows, and they were, how do I write this? This was like a couple of years ago.
Sure.
We lived in the camper, and they were making signs. They're like, all right, we're going to hang it on the stop sign. We're going to hang it on the mailbox. And it was pouring that day. And I'm
Sure.
like, we can't hang. Like, I don't want to even crush
All
you.
4 cars that come by.
Yes, yes, to come to their yard sale or
Right.
whatever it is. And I think that if we just allow them to be creative, to think, to problem solve, like, okay, what do you see that is something, a problem that you can solve for, right? Because
Right.
that's business in general. And encouraging them in that, and helping them name it, and helping them think through the systems of it, and just giving them that mindset. No, are they going to actually create a business at 7 years old? Maybe, but probably not. So let them do lemonade stands. We are doing a lemonade stand with our kids and our best friends' kids, and the purpose is not just for the profit of the lemonade. It's for a greater mission, right? We're going to talk about our expo and advertise for that and just different things. And so at that same time, it's a good opportunity to talk to your kids about profit, right? So our kids are going to be like, okay, I got $1 for that cup of lemonade. How do I want to spend it? The good time for a reality check is to be like, all right, but that cup cost us
Sure.
50 cents. So really your profit is only 50 cents. And what are we going to do with that? Because that's what really sets them up to not view business as just profit, but as a tool,
Sure.
to use.
How can we leverage that profit? Again, something I've heard said is like, I think we're called, especially in this realm of pursuing entrepreneurship, if God's put something on your heart, like he's going to bless it. There's really no question about that. It's just us doing the hard work of the kind of walk it out piece.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like all for the mindset of we are called to, in my opinion, use money to love people. And in such a way, we're serving God, right? Like the parable of the talents is taught about in the book of Matthew. And there's these 5 guys come to their master, or 3 guys come to their master. One gets 5 talents, one gets 2, one gets 1. The 5 and the 2 go out and they put what God deposited, or what in the story, the parable from Jesus is that the boss, if you will, invested this into these 2 gentlemen, and they took it and they took risk. That's where a lot of people stop right there. They're like, wait, there's risk involved, I'm out. And then they took it, they invested it, and they got a return. And God measured not anything other than the fact that they got return, right? 5 guy brought back 5 more, so he had 10. 2 guy brought back 2 more, so he had 4. But then there was the 1, and the 1 guy took it and was fearful. God deposited a 1 talent. In this case, it's equal to a sum of money as the story goes. But in my heart, it's like there's a gift inside each and every one of our children that God deposited. It might be that they might be the next professional baseball player. They might be the next world-changing entrepreneur. They might be the person that, hey, I'm going to be this in my family. I'm going to be the person that stops this generational curse in my family because this happened and this happened and this happened, but I'm going to be the one it stops with. And whatever it is, we have to be willing to cultivate that and encourage them to invest that gift that God gave them back into the, what I say, kingdom marketplace. And so if we'll do that, God will say, well done, my good and faithful servant. But to the 1 guy, he took his thing that God gave him and he just went over here and he hid it. He put it, as other scripture will say, underneath, lit his candle and covered it up, so he didn't let the world see it. He never took the risk with the gift that God gave him, and he got no return. And God was like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially in the parable. And so for me, it's such a reminder. It's like, if God's given you something, parents, he's given you children, continue to invest in them in whatever way possible. Like just having this conversation today, reading those books we've talked about in the past, like whatever it is, just continue to push your children towards using and leveraging the gifts that God's given them, but also the dreams that they might have. Like I never want to be the person that diminishes my children's pursuit of something. Like you said that, like it's a rainy day, they're making signs, not a solid business plan, right? Putting signs up on the stop sign on the back county road. But hey, I appreciate the zeal. And so then it's just a matter of how do we guide and direct that into a passionate, purpose for them to truly pursue. And that's where, I don't know, I think a big role that we have as parents with our children to really invest in that wealth pillar concept. I mean, we live in a first world country. We live in the greatest country in the world. We are wealthy. There's no question, you know, across all measures of otherworldly aspects of things. What I'm talking about when we say wealth pillar is how can we create something that pushes back darkness in this world, leverages a tool like money for God's goodness.
Yeah. And I mean, with that, you know, we've talked about money habits and spenders and savers and all of that. And this is also where the foundation of our kids' spending habits and saving habits can be set. And I've seen I think it's like a piggy bank or it's a bank of some kind, and it has different little slots in it. And it's like, okay, this amount I'm going to be able to spend. This amount I'm going to save. This amount I'm going to give. This amount I'm going to reinvest.
Sure.
And it just teaches our kids to switch from, oh, I have all of this to spend, to, no, I'm going to give that away, you know, church, charity, missionaries, different things. I'm going to do that. I can spend this amount. I'm going to save this amount, and this amount I'm going to go and maybe put it back into my business to make it better.
Sure.
Or, you know, start a new business or different things like that. And I think whenever you lay that foundation from an early stage and really let them have a lemonade stand and do all of that with their profit.
Sure.
Make sure you do, you know, humble them real quick with the expenses.
Yeah.
You know, revenue is not profit. But I really do think that doing that at an early age really gets them to think appropriately when it comes to that. And then when it's big money and not just monopoly,
Sure.
then maybe they'll do it better.
Well, so on that concept of stewardship, like I've heard this, and we've talked about this, I think, on the podcast before, where people will often say, if I just had, I think it's like something like 20 or 30% more. People always are in that thought. They're just like, well, if I just had this much more, right? And the conviction question here is, well, if you were God, would you give you more money?
Mm-hmm.
Because going back to the parable is that God gave to them, right? And then they went and did with what God gave them. The worthy servants, right? The good and faithful servants did that. And the one who didn't do what God had put on his heart for him to do, he got too afraid of making a mistake or losing it or anything like that. And he just buried it into the earth and hid it away so that he wouldn't lose it. And God's like, that's not why I gave you that, right? And so this is something I'm not calling you out. We've discussed this before, but you'll say something like, well, I'm not creative. And I'm like, well, you're made in the image of God, and God, the first thing God ever tells us about God is that he's created. He is creative. He says in Genesis chapter 1, he said, and God created, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So why did God tell us this? Like, of all the things he could have started with, that's the first thing he tells us. It must be pretty important. And so if he's creative and created all of this, and his like cornerstone of creation is us as human beings, like we are his masterpiece, right? He said his total tone changed. He says, let us make them in our image. Everything else was like, he just did it. He said, you know, creatures of the ground, let them come forth, right? Creatures of the sea, let them come forth. But when he got to man, it was like, let us make them in our image. And so if God's creative, then we are creative. And so how do we cultivate that creativity in our children so that they can create something and really push forward against the darkness of this world? And that's like, for us, that's this concept of the natural parents, right? That's why we want to have an expo. It's not just for the sake of getting together and hearing some really amazing people speak, have some awesome vendors, maybe shop some natural and, you know, holistic ideas and stuff like that. But it's like, let's come together and build something that I'm not even sure yet what God wants to do with it. But I really believe it's something that's going to push against some of the big dark issues that are, or at least come from, a broken family in this world. Because I don't know, I always say that's a molehill I'll die on all the time, is that I think you could trace every bad, broken, you know, emergency room issue, if you will, right? Like, be it human trafficking to divorce to, you know, all these different concepts that we're facing as families in modern day world, they could all be traced to just that breakdown of the family unit.
Somewhere in the family tree.
Exactly. Somewhere. And I think there's spiritual realms to that and stuff like that. So the hopes with the Natural Parents Conference is that, right? This whole podcast, why are we doing this? Let's get a community of like-minded families together and push back against darkness.
Yeah. Just growing together as a family, but also thinking differently, because, we're used to just hearing 9 to 5, all of the things, and that is fine. Like you said, there's entrepreneurs who are powerful people who actually move a mission forward.
Sure.
But let's just cultivate that way of thinking around all things faith, health, family, and wealth, and come together in a group with like-minded people.
I love it. Yes, we should do that.
Awesome. So if you guys have either started a small business with your kids or your kids have ideas, I want to hear about them. So please post them in the Natural Parents Facebook group so that we can come along, cheer along, and support you in any way that we can.
Life's not fair. If life were fair, we'd all be in big trouble. If your kids are anything like mine, they say all the time, "Dad, that's not fair." And I don't know where they get it from. I'm here to tell you today, don't always give your kids fairness. Teach them that life's not fair.
We always follow up when they're like, "That's not fair. Life's not fair."
Yeah, they
And
know.
they
They almost
know,
could say
yes.
it. What does Dad say?
Life's not fair.
Right.
You just said that the other day.
And again, I think it's one of those things that culture just breeds this ideology that, kids just innately they start with this inborn aspect of justness and fairness, and well, that doesn't seem to add up. So they're always assessing for that, and I think it's worthy to guide them towards what life's really going to bring their way.
Yeah, and I think that if you always focus on what's fair and what's not fair, it brings out comparison. It brings out being a victim. Of course we want right to be done.
Right.
And we don't want it to always be like, oh, well, I'll just take the short end of the stick every single time.
Right.
But you don't want to instill in them to be looking on how they are the victim in this because it's not fair.
Sure.
Or looking at them always comparing, because that doesn't give life to anybody. Or, and no situation is always going to be fair because life is not fair.
Right. It's not. And, thank God for grace and thank God for justice and all these different things that we are promised. Maybe not always in this life, maybe in the next life or whatever, but, it was so manifest in our life because of twins, I think. And the heart pull for us to always make sure they had the same experiences. And that's my goal, is can they have the same experiences? But, it was so interesting. Brinley, of all of our kids at the beginning, I'd say she might be the best about it now at times, as far as just like, well, it's not fair. But maybe it's because we had to get through so much where I remember every time we'd portion out a meal, she'd be looking. Which one's got the most, which one is the fullest, and well, she got more than me, and all these different things. And I'm like, sis, no, she probably didn't. And so we've tried to cultivate different ways and where we're, talking about this with her, but now it's bigger things. It's, well, she's got this, or Bub got more time on that, or whatever it might be. And it's just so hard where they're always seeking fairness, but it's tough being a parent, because we want to give them the same experiences, but life's not fair. So what do we do?
Right. And it is hard, especially with having kids that are very close in age. So obviously we have the twins, but then our son is only 2 years younger, but it feels like they're triplets.
Right.
And they all want the same thing. So if one gets a one-on-one day with grandma, they all want that immediately, but they all want to do the exact same things, which rightfully so. They want to experience it the same way. But it's just so important to make them not compare. But something that's funny that you taught us is, I guess this is what happened in your household. See, I have an older brother, but I feel like I'm an only child,
right,
because I never had to compete or for anything. I was always the only one, it felt like the only one that wanted to hang out with my parents, and I always got my mom to myself and all of that. And so you had this rule, I guess, growing up with your sisters, that if you had a chocolate bar and you were going to split it, well, one person splits it, the other person chooses what half they get.
Yeah, that's a good equalizer.
Yes, and it has come in handy so many times. There was just like a fruit jerky that the girls found in the pantry. And they're like, can we have it? Can we have it? There's only one. And I'm like, yep, you split and you choose which half that you want. And
the precision that comes in in that equation where they're like measuring and
Oh,
making
yeah.
sure that the cut is perfectly
Chiseling off an
even.
extra little piece.
It's so amazing to me, but that's what I'm talking about, where kids just innately, they know, no one teaches them. They just say, Dad, that's not fair. And it's like, you're right. In this equation, in this moment right now, it might not be fair. Now, again, there's certain things that we're going to talk fairness and we're going to work through that, but it's just like, life is not fair. Don't damage your children in trying to always create every situation into a fair equation, ultimately is the invitation, right? I say it all the time, and here's the greatest equalizer of ever. We just, on our way to the podcast studio today, I had this conversation with Avery, right? They're mad, twin sisters. They, as a grand total of, if I count right, 5 bracelets. One has 3, one has 2. And when I talk bracelets, I'm talking about the scrunchy, no hair pull.
Yeah, they're like rubber
type hair ties, basically. And they're fighting over them in the back seat of the van on the way here. And they're splitting it, and Avery's just really distraught. And she says, Dad, that's not fair. She's the one with 3 of them. Her sister had 2. So I'm still to this moment not fully understanding why it wasn't fair, but for some reason she thought she needed 4 and her sister only needed 1. And so they're working through that. And I said, well, Avery, you know what the greatest thing in life that wasn't fair is what happened to Jesus? And she answers, died on a cross. I said, best I can tell, you're not dead on a cross right now. Like, and Jesus, he never did anything wrong. He was perfect. He never said, bad words. He never yelled at his parents. He never did, all these things that sometimes our kiddos do. And it's like, kind of almost this light bulb moment for her in her great frustration over hair ties was that, wait a second, you know what, Dad, you're right. Like, I'm not going to win this fight. Dad understands that life's not fair because we have a perfect example of how unfair and unjust that our Savior was, that died on a cross for us, right? Like, he lived this perfect life, died a sinner's death, so I didn't have to. And so I think bringing that into vision for our children is the greatest thing you could ever do for them.
Yeah, and just that grace alone is better than fairness, right? And I think that just making sure that our kids aren't sitting there with like a little scoreboard and tallying up, when it was fair and when it wasn't fair and when they got the better half and when their sibling got, I think that if we just teach them and model with grace ourselves when life isn't fair to us, I think that alone can just be huge in modeling that for them.
Right. And it's not easy because that's my own nature is to do that. How much time did I get doing this thing, or was I treated fairly in this business exchange, or all these different things? It's just not always that way. And so we desire that in our heart and our children. It's only natural for them to do it as well. But with a grace-filled heart, how can we have that conversation with our kids just gently, not just in the moments of you're mad, you're arguing, you're yelling at me and tell me it's not fair, and I'm going to yell back and say life's not fair. Like, how do we actually reveal to them in tangible ways that they, can understand that sometimes fair isn't actually even what you want.
Right, because if we were truthful, fair would be, let's look around the world. We were talking about this the other night, I think, at dinner.
It's painful.
And we were just talking about the way that other people live. I don't remember what brought it up. Close.
One of the kids said something along the lines of how they had done the laundry or something, but like, you do the laundry. That was the exchange.
Yes, something like, or maybe they had just put on a new shirt and I said, and they were going to change into jammies. And I said, oh, that shirt's not dirty. And they're like, yeah, it is. I wore it for a few minutes. And like, did you know there's people that have never washed their clothes?
Right.
Like, ever.
Right.
And we talked about, just how people don't have bed sheets. Some people don't even have beds. They don't even have floors to clean, different things. So it's like, really, if we want to talk about fair, let's talk about that way. But I feel like in a moment when your kids are really focusing on comparison and equal and fair and all of that, just like, let's take a break and let's talk about what we're grateful for. We always say, give me 3 things you're grateful for.
Right.
And just really being able to pause them and let's actually look and see what we do have to be grateful for instead of focusing on lack and what we don't have and scarcity.
But lack and scarcity is really actually the original sin, right? And so God made man, Adam and Eve put them both in the garden and said, you can have everything in the garden, lest that one tree. And Satan came in and said, did God really say, right? And so now he, the father of lies, is speaking lies because God, he said the whole thing. Did God really say you couldn't eat from any tree in the garden? It's like, no, that's not at all what God said. He just said out of his sovereignty, out of his knowledge, out of his grace, his mercy, his justness, said, I know better than you, creation of mine. Don't eat from this tree. It'll be bad for you. What do? Don't touch the red button. Bam! Big red button, right? It's just like we have to have it. And so our children, in the same way, in the same light, get into this mindset by the nature of this world to thinking like, well, what don't I have? Mm-hmm. That's what fairness is really what they're seeking is, well, she's got one that I wanted to have, so it's not fair that she got it and I don't. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, that might be true. But God in his sovereignty and knowing, he gave this person, right? Like we talk about Matthew, the parable of the talents all the time, is like he gave 1 5, 1 2, and 1 1 talents, right, to do with. And so God bestows these blessings on us. It's our job, especially as Americans with children living in this country where we are so abundantly and beyond blessed to have all that we have, is to point their focus on what they do have and how they can get a return for God's glory on it, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're right, like sitting there talking, we have 2 washing machines in our house. There's places in the world where, you know, you might have a person as an adult has never seen a washing machine, right? And it's like we want this aspect of fair, but we don't even realize how great we have it mm-hmm. because we're focusing on the lack that we don't have. And right. So in my opinion, when we ask for fairness as adults or as children, what we're really focusing on is the thing that Satan would have us focus on, is what we don't have, not what God gave us and all the blessings that we do have. So it's physiologically impossible for our brains to be in gratitude and gratefulness, like you're talking about, and scarcity and lack at the same time. That's always brought forth, in my opinion. I see it all the time, at least in these business, entrepreneurship conversations. But this is life. Like, original sin was a sin of lack, was a sin of scarcity, because the King James Version of the Bible says the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life are what this world has to offer. And when our kids are seeking fairness, those are the 3 things that they're seeking and looking for. It's really what's out there that I don't have, or what's out there that they have and I don't have, instead of, man, look at all that God has blessed me with. Mm-hmm. How fortunate am I?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember the quote I was reading to you from a book that I have. I can't remember it word for word, but basically when you complain and when you focus on lack and what you don't have, you're a crap magnet.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know the exact words, but
that's fine.
I think it was Taylor that said it.
Oh.
Taylor Welch.
Okay.
But it is so true whenever you do that, and
yep.
And it attracts that to your life. And so it really is just so important for also us to make sure that we aren't complaining and aren't focusing on what we don't have. And I know we've talked about this before. We tell our kids every single day. I don't know. We heard it every day for 4 years, and it didn't take till we were in adulthood and parents to actually reflect on that and be like, how profound.
That's so good.
But every day in high school at the beginning, and it said, make it a great day or not. The choice is yours. And we tell our kids that. And I know it has not sunk in yet, because it didn't for us until we really needed it. But it is your choice. You get to focus on what you want, and it can either be good or it can be bad. You can either have a good day or you can have a bad day.
Yeah. And for us, anybody listening, parents, you might notice that in yourself, feel a little conviction around, maybe it be covetousness, where we're seeing out there of what somebody has and we don't have it, so we want it, kind of a deal. But also we might recognize some of those patterns in our children where they're seeking and looking for fairness in every equation. So again, I think most simple way that you can start to train this is work it like a muscle. You don't build muscle by just having a gym membership. You got to work out the muscles, right? And so working out that part of the actual science of it is the frontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex that thinks cognitively around the things that we are grateful for. If you can work that, if you can teach your kids to work that, then we can start to take the place of the again, if I were to say it, maybe covetousness is really the root of fairness, or the seeking of fairness is desiring things that God gave other people and not us. If we can start to work that mind muscle around, well, let me just be thankful for what God gave me. A really simple practice we do with our kids every day is tell us 3 things that you're grateful for. A mentor of ours said that his mom growing up wouldn't even let him come downstairs unless he'd given her 3 things that he was grateful to God for. And it's just so powerful how those types of things can carry a child through into adulthood and make a huge difference.
Yeah, it really sets them up for success. So, I mean, if you want to raise kingdom kids, then we have to stop raising them for a fair world.
Right.
And just really helping them to focus on the good and focus on that God is a just God and there's grace, and that we should be giving that grace as well, just as it's been given to us.
No question. If you guys enjoyed this, hope you loved having the conversation. Join us next week and every Monday for new episodes talking about all things faith, health, family, and wealth with the Natural Parents Podcast.
From the bottom of our hearts, we want to say thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with someone you know and leave a review. By doing so, we're able to grow this community of amazing people just like you and raise a generation of children that know God and do His will on earth. We'll see you next time.
This is the Natural Parents Podcast with Ryan and Abbie Hewkin.